So today we're gonna go over a statistical approach to God's existence. All right? So I wanted to ask you, what is God to you? I want to open the floor here. Anyone, what is God to you? Everything. Okay, so the attribute is everything. Anybody else?
Nature.
Nature. God is nature. All right, Karen?
Provider.
God is a provider. You like that about God, that He's a provider? You?
Father.
A father. Important.
Teacher.
Yes. A teacher. Absolutely. All right. Yes? Judge. Yes, that's true. All of that is true. All of that is certainly true, and I agree with that. There is something that to me is of maximum importance. And that is, to me, God is the ultimate forecaster. You probably never heard that. You say, God, ultimate forecaster? What's this guy talking about? To me, it's so important that God is the ultimate forecaster. It makes a big difference in my relationship with Him. Why is that? Some of you may think, why is this fella telling me that a very important attribute for him is for God to be the ultimate forecaster? Well, let me tell you a little bit about myself, and then you'll understand why. I'm a supply chain professional with 30 years of experience in the field. Currently work for a company in the manufacturing business, and we manufactured irrigation goods. We have I have 6,000 different finished goods that we need to sell. And one very important part of that supply chain is the beginning, the forecast. Based upon the forecast, we order the material, we program production, we program space in the distribution centers, and we sell to the different customers. It is very important for my company that we provide an accurate forecast. And then we need to provide a solid demand plan. What does solid mean? Well, very simple. Solid means that it's got to be accurate. It can be no error. How do we measure error? There is a key performance indicator that we use in the company called WMA, weighted mean percent absolute error. Okay? From now on, we're going to refer to that as forecast error. Okay? And let me tell you, it is impossible to have a forecast error of 0. It'll be desired, it is theoretical, yes, but it's absolutely impossible. You don't find forecasts in the world that I live in manufacturing, with 0 error. Every 1 percentage point that we're able to lower the forecast error represents about $2 million of savings. I remember 2 years ago when they interviewed me, a good part of the interview was said, okay, how do you do things so you lower the forecast error? Okay? I remember back in those days, the forecast error was in the mid-70s. A year after, we were able to lower it to the lower 50s, then to the lower 40s, and now the goal is to be in the upper 30s. So we're talking about savings of $75 million a year. So the company is willing to pay top dollar to have a team to invest in technology, so we reduce the forecast. I've never been asked, never ever, to provide a forecast of 0, with 0 error, sorry. Never. Why? Because it's plainly impossible. It's not human. Cannot do. So, if somebody says, we want you to have a forecast that is consistently and is always at 0, I can tell you, that job is not for me, I'm going to fail, and you will not find anybody to do that. What they can ask me, put pressure to my team and I, is to keep on reducing it, okay? I've never seen a forecast in the manufacturing industry that is below 25%. And that will be top notch, 25%. So this is the level of forecast accuracy at the human level. You know, we as humans, the most that we can get. Alrighty, here I'm not going to get into the details over here, but there are some forecasting techniques. On one end, the sales team, they do what is called a qualitative forecast, which is judgment, intuition, talking to the customer, how much you think you're going to sell, some industry studies. They come up with a forecast, and it's called a qualitative forecast. And then my team and I come up with a quantitative forecast. We go back to the past, we identify patterns, and based upon those patterns, we try to predict the future, the sales for the next 12 months. Also, we go in the cause and effect, we go into important indices published by governments, for example, the United States, in terms of new housing startups, in terms of inflation, economic growth, and all those good things. We do linear and non-linear extrapolation. Okay, all right, thank you. We do linear and non-linear extrapolations, and then we come up with what is called a quantitative forecast. And now we're investing heavily in machine learning, artificial intelligence. Okay, we think that that's going to give us a few percentage, so we get to that golden level of 25%. Here's my college. One of my undergraduate degrees is in applied mathematics. I want to make it very clear, I'm not showing this diploma to you just to show off or to be pompous by any means. I want to establish with you technical credibility. If I'm talking about forecasting, I know a thing or two. Next slide is an important certification, that I obtained. Advanced Certified Professional Forecaster. A lot of hours dedicated to that, so I'm able to forecast in the best possible manner. I remember one day in 1991, I was not a disciple yet. And then I thought, I was always convinced that God existed, even though I was not a disciple. I thought, I look at nature, and nature claims God, the existence of God. There's no doubt about that. And then I thought, wouldn't that be cool if I could create a mathematical equation that will prove the existence of God? That would be awesome. 6 years later, I became a disciple. And today I don't have an equation that shows that, unfortunately. But I don't need it either. I just have a statistical review with you that will let us, it will be like nature. Once we look at that, we're going to say, well, yeah, God definitely exists. So what makes God to be God? The fact that he's supernatural, above all nature, above everything. Also, that he's omniscient, knows everything. Also, God is omnipresent. That baffles me because I can pray to God right now and I know he will listen to me. I will feel him close. But somebody in New Zealand at this very moment can also pray and that person can feel this closeness. That would be impossible for a human to do that. Yet God does it. And that God is omnipotent. He can do everything, anything. Nothing is impossible to him. So how do we know that God exists? There are several sources. Here's just 10 of them. There is more than that. There are cosmological reasons, moral, theological, ontological, mind, personal experience, pastoral awareness. What is that? That's just philosophical. Let's leave it at that. Transcendental, mathematics, which is what we're doing today, and evidential. So is it important for us to have an accurate forecast on the Bible? Is it important that the Bible is accurate? Absolutely. If it's not accurate, how can we dedicate our lives, our behavior, our way of thinking, feeling, decision making, harmonize with the biblical pillars if the Bible is not 100% accurate? So it is my firm belief that God takes care of the Bible to be super accurate, so we don't have to worry about that. So the one we can do is obey accordingly. What would happen if somebody tells you a forecast and it's not true? Would you believe in that person? Would you put all your faith in that person? Absolutely not. Something that amazes me is that the Bible has a total of 2,500 forecasts, prophecies also, okay? Prophecies as well. 500 of them are not due to fruition yet. They're in the making, okay? They're not to be fulfilled, at least for the moment, okay? But 2,000 of them were fulfilled. 2,000 prophecies. So me as a professional forecaster, somebody hands me a book and tells me there are 2,000 forecasts here that became reality to the T. Wow. To me, that's not possible. But yet with God, we know it is definitely possible. The Bible has okay, hold on for a second. The Bible has consistently predicted places, names, scientific discoveries, you name it. And many people that you talk to, some of them are atheists, some of them are not, they say, no, this is coincidence, Jose. Don't be amazed. Something had to happen, and that thing happened. There's a very smart astrophysicist, Dr. Ross, who has elaborated some mathematical algorithms that calculate the feasibility of a prophecy to become true by chance. So guess what? All those 2,000 prophecies, for those to be taking place by chance because something had to happen and it just coincidentally that happened, the probabilities of that happening is 10 to the exponential minus 1,000. That level of accuracy doesn't exist in my job, let me tell you. So that's it. Some of you may think, what is exponential to the minus 1,000? That's it. That's it. 0.00000 1,000 times 1%. Try to plug that into your calculator, see what happens. So that is not coincidence to me. That is a statistical proof that God exists. He's there. I don't know if some of you play the lottery, but if you go to California and buy a lottery ticket, just one, imagine, and you are the winner, and you do that for 125 times in a row. That is the same possibility as those 2,000 prophecies happening by chance. So that gives you an idea of where we are. So forecasting in biblical times is a good thing that it was not a forecast in biblical times, because God's standard is zero error. And I'm right now in the upper 30s, and the best that is humanly possible is 25. So it's a good thing. Let's go to Deuteronomy 18:22. I will read it. I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their fellow Israelites, and I will put my words in his mouth. He will tell them everything I command him. I myself will call to account anyone who does not listen to my words, that the prophet speaks in my name. But a prophet who presumes to speak in my name anything I have not commanded, or a prophet who speaks in the name of other gods, is to be put to death. You must say to yourself, how can we know when a message has not been spoken by the Lord? If what a prophet proclaims in the name of the Lord does not take place or come true, that is a message the Lord has not spoken. That prophet has spoken presumptuously, so do not be alarmed. So forecast is to be taken seriously. If the prophet mixes up with his own things, what's going to happen? He's gonna mess up. He's not going to be able to provide a prophecy that is correct. And God says, hey, that person deserves death. Why is God so strict on that? Because God wants to give us a book that we can fully trust, that we can base our lives, our personalities. And then the people say, how do we know if something is true or not? Well, very simple. If whoever is providing you that prophecy, there's a cricket somewhere? Or is that not? Is that okay? So there's a cricket listening to me right now. If it's not true, then if that prophet doesn't come upon to be realized, then don't believe it. It's a fraud. That's why God provides goes all the way in to give us a book that is 100% accurate, something that we can trust. God expects us to believe the Bible. God expects us to believe the prophecies. Those prophecies are not fulfilled yet. He wants us to have zero doubt that those will take place sooner or later. Okay? Now we're going to talk about a prophecy that is of great value to us, which is Jesus on the cross, Jesus crucified. We go to Psalms chapter 22, verses 16 and 18. Dogs surround me. A pack of villains encircles me. They pierce my hands and my feet. All my bones are on display. People stir and gloat over me. They divide my clothes among them and cast lots for my garment. Next verse also, Zechariah 12:10. And I will pour out on the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of grace and supplication. They will look on me, the one they have pierced, and they will mourn for him as one mourns for an only child, and grieve bitterly for him as one grieves for a firstborn son. Another one predicting the crucifixion of Jesus. Psalms 34:20. He protects all his bones. Not one of them will be broken. So let's see. When was Psalms written? 1,000 years before Jesus came to earth. Okay? Zechariah, 6 centuries before Jesus came. When was the cross designed and engineered? In -400 by the Assyrians. Then the Romans took it and said, let us perfect it. Let us make it more painful, more suffering. They over-engineered it. So I think to myself, if crucifixion didn't exist in the -1000, how could the prophet predict that the Messiah would be crucified? It blows my mind. But if you think God is omnipotent, he can do everything, then that comes from God, which means God exists. Let us continue. We know that in the New Testament there are plenty of verses, passages that talk about the cross. So let's go one by one here. It says here that they did not have to break his knees as customary. Why was it customary to break the knees of the person who was crucified? Why? Because through the knees we'll go up and get a little bit of air, and then the person will die of exhaustion. And then sometimes, it's like, man, it's been 3 hours, dude, we gotta go do something else. They break the knees of the person, and then that person, in a matter of a few minutes, died of asphyxiation. But in this case, there was an exception. With Jesus, there was no need to do that, as he already died. How can the Bible, 1,000 years before, know about those details? It baffles my mind. It says here, his clothes will be divided. People will stir, mock, insult him, and cast lots for one of his garments. Not 2, not 3 of his garments, 1. That detail, and 1,000 years earlier. So for example, if somebody says, Jose, what is going to be the weather tomorrow? I'll say, okay, whatever the weather is today, maybe a little bit warm, because we're in spring, and we're getting closer to summer. So whatever temperature today, plus 1 degree. But if somebody tells me, Jose, predict the weather for November 2344, that year. I say, man, I don't know, man. For God, that's not impossible. God, he can do it. And we see Dr. Ross here, who calculated a probability of chance fulfillment, of that happening by chance. It is 0.0014 times 1%. And yet the Bible nails it. Amazing. We have another important prophecy, which is Judas betraying Jesus. Okay? Let's go to the Old Testament. Let's go to Psalm 55, verses 12 to 14. If an enemy were insulting me, I could endure it. If a foe were raising against me, I could hide it. But it is you, a man like myself, my companion, my close friend, with whom I have enjoyed sweet fellowship at the house of God, as we talk among the worshippers. So 1,000 years later, it tells you the Messiah is going to be betrayed by a close friend, somebody that he hang out with. We'll go to another important verse here, another important passage in Matthew 27, verses from 3 to 10. Now, when Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus had been condemned, he regretted what he had done and returned the 30 silver coins to the chief priests and the elders, saying, I've sinned by betraying innocent blood. But they said, what is that to us? You take care of it yourself. So Judas threw the silver coins into the temple and left. Then he went out and hanged himself. The chief priest took the silver and said, it is not lawful to put this into the temple treasury, since it is blood money. After consulting together, they brought the potter's field with it as a burial place for foreigners. For this reason, that field has been called the field of blood to this day. Then what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. They took the 30 silver coins, the price of the one whose price had been set by the people of Israel, and they gave them the potter's field as the Lord commanded. Once again, the Bible in Psalms predicts the betrayal of Judas to Jesus 1,000 years earlier. And then I find it impossible. How would the prophet know that the financial transaction for that treason would be 30 silver coins? 30, allow me to say, miserable silver coins. Why do I say miserable? If we melt that silver, if we go into the silver market and we sell it, we will get $261. If I'm at that time, in biblical times, if I have oxus, and one of those oxus damages or kills a slave, I will have to pay the slave owner 30 silver coins. That's how it is, how it was managed. Again, the level of detail on the forecast on those prophets is exponentially amazing. Also, the Bible tells us, way ahead of time, where is Jesus going to be born? Okay? We'll go to Micah. Micah written 800 years before Jesus walked on earth. Micah 5, verses from 1 to 2. Marshal your troops now, city of troops, for a siege is laid against us. It will strike Israel's ruler on the cheek with a rod. But you, Bethlehem Ephratah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from ancient times. Okay, so on the back we can see a biblical map at the time. And what is Bethlehem? Bethlehem is right here. It's under casual English Bible, Bethlehem. Right there. It's just one more city in biblical times, let's call it. One of the many cities. Was Bethlehem an important city? Well, in century -10, King David was born there, so he got some importance. We know that King David and Jesus share lineage. Okay. But what's amazing is that in the book, in the Old Testament, in Joshua and Nehemiah, it doesn't mention the town. So it's more a bit of an insignificant town, somewhere that is not important. And yet we know that Jesus was born there. How do we know that? Well, the Bible tells us in Matthew 2:1. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem. Imagine, somebody tells us the Messiah is going to be born in the United States, but we need to forecast where he is to be born. You know, I think to myself, as a statistician, I would think to myself, well, there is 233 million inhabitants in the United States. 80% of the people live in big cities. The biggest city is New York, so if I do some numbers, 3% of the population lives in New York. That would be a forecast that I could say, okay. But you know, in 900 years, maybe New York doesn't even exist. Maybe the tides of water go up, and then there is land taken away by the ocean. So I'm going to choose Chicago. Why? Because it's in the middle. There's no problem with that, and it's a big city. So 1.5%. All right. And somebody here comes and says, no, the Messiah will be born in Bisbee, Arizona. Exactly right. People will laugh. Exactly right. And what happens? He's born in Bisbee, Arizona. The equivalent of Bisbee, Arizona, with all due respect to people that are from Bisbee, can be said about Bethlehem. Same importance. You know what I mean? And yet he was born there. Forecasting ability of God is definitely second to none. Now, it is very important also that we talk about the forecasts that are yet to come. One of them is the second coming of Jesus. So let's go over a few verses. First Thessalonians chapter 4, 16, 17. There will be the shout of command, the archangel's voice, the sound of God's trumpet, and the Lord himself will come down from heaven. Those who have died believing in Christ will rise to life first. Then we who are living at that time will be gathered up along with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. So we will always be with the Lord. Another important verse, Hebrews chapter 9, verses 27 to 28. Everyone must die once, and after that be judged by God. In the same manner, Christ also was offered in sacrifice once to take away the sins of many. He will appear a second time, not to deal with sin, but to save those who are waiting for him. To save those who are waiting for him. So we want to be waiting for him. What does the Bible mean here by waiting for him? Something that I've seen is that you ask somebody, hey, do you believe in the second coming of Christ? Some of them will say yes. Some of them will say no. Some of them will say yes, but it is not happening anytime soon. But we don't know. The Bible tells us that we don't know exactly when. Yeah, but there's 500 prophecies that need to take place first. That's probably one of the last ones. And by the time that all happens, I will not be here. You may be 40 years old. You probably think you're going to live 60 more years, still 100, okay? 60 more years, and you think, no, in 60 years, Jesus is not going to come. I don't think that's the right attitude. You may be right, you might be not. But here very clearly the Bible tells us those who are waiting for him. Now, then you see the forecastability of God in action with zero forecast error. Do you have any doubts that those 500 prophecies may not happen? Let's go back to the past. Did God deliver on forecast accuracy? 100%. So I don't think he's going to non-deliver in the next 500 forecasts that are to take place. So here are my conclusions for your consideration. The Bible is 100% accurate. God is taking care of that. The Bible, therefore, is 100% trustworthy. You can base the Bible to make decisions, to shape your personality, the way you think, the way you act, the way you set up your lifestyle. We can commit our living to Bible teachings. We know that exactly is not adulterated. And then a conclusion that I've reached is that I don't need any faith to acknowledge God's existence. I can go to nature, I can go to statistics, and it's very obvious that God exists. I don't need faith for that. Is faith important? Absolutely, it is important. Where? In your daily walk with God. Thank you, brothers and sisters, and to God be all glory.
Thank you so much, Jose Luis. Let's give him one more round of applause. For me personally, this was a huge treat. I'm studying data analytics in school, and so I just like, oh, I know that, yeah. But I think I love Jose Luis's just final point that just the Bible is trustworthy and accurate. And that I think just so often I think just different things come up and it's just like to make me doubt or go, oh, like, do I really believe this one thing? And I think like I just love this and just gives me just a different bedrock to just fall back on and just another just thing to turn to just when I'm having doubt. So I really appreciate that so much, Jose. And now Casey has or I'm gonna write, and then Casey has one thing, and then we will be dismissed. All right. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for